Live. We're covering everything that you need to know in talent experience.
People applying for new positions is like the cherry on top.
With the technology to attract talent.
Recruiters always know their best talent.
The AI just learned to use that information.
Inclusion efforts across the organization.
Tell me what it's like to work through associate story.
Interviews with leaders in the industry. Talk about what's new in HR tech. What are the hot topics? We're here every week, folks. Weekly look at the latest and greatest topics in HR. Welcome, everyone. Happy Thursday. It is 12 noon Eastern time, and you know what that means. It is time for Talent Experience Live. Talent Experience Live, of course, covering everything that you need to know in talent acquisition, recruiting, HR, and talent management. We here at Talent Experience Live like to describe it as the greatest show on the internet. Still, week after week, no one's complained about that, so I'm continuing to run with it. It is the greatest show on the internet, especially if you're in human resources. I am your host, Devin Foster, and this show, this program, is proudly brought to you by the good folks here at Phenom, whose purpose, of course, is to help 1 billion people find the right job. That, of course, is not a typo. It isn't 1 million. It isn't 100,000. It is 1 billion. We kick that off with everything that we do, including this show. So if you're looking for the right job, you might want to talk to the good folks at Phenom. They do this through their talent experience platform, which helps candidates find the right fit faster, employees evolve in their current roles and beyond, recruiters achieve some next level productivity, and managers build better teams with data, analytics, and automation. Speaking of automation, all of the talent experience platform is powered by super slick artificial intelligence and machine learning that is done on the back end, so you never feel it as an end user. So if you're interested in AI, if you are interested in the candidate experience, the employee experience, manager experience, and anything in between, definitely head on over to phenom.com. Today, we're running a replay episode, an Encore edition. The crowd loved it so much, we wanted to give it to you again in case you missed it, in case you wanted to share it out to your friends, family, and loved one. We are talking all around the quiet quit. Quiet quitting is a topic that, quite frankly, you can't get away from if you wanted to. And we're going to continue to add to that problem by diving into it today with myself and Jonathan Dale. But before we get into that, I did want to announce some exciting news here at Talent Experience Live for the month of September. Starting next week into the first week of October, we are actually going to take a seasonal approach. We are going to dive into recruitment marketing specifically. And we have a plethora of great guests. We're actually going to HR Tech next week, where we will meet with Amit Parmar of Clickify. We're also going to talk to Jordan Slettinger of Cave about recruitment marketing. We are going to talk to some folks at ChemMed the following week. And of course, we're going to show some great things around what we're doing here at Phenom to help with recruitment marketing. So definitely, if you're in Vegas next week, stop by our booth. We're also going to be at Workday Rising. We're going to be at any HR event that you can be. But if you can't make it and you still want to be a part of the action, definitely tune in to Talent Experience Live next week, 12 noon Eastern time, for our session with Amit. It's going to be a good one all around social media. You won't want to miss it. But that's next week. We're in the present still. We'll worry about that once we get there. Today, we are talking about the quiet quit. Few folks have really explained it. And if they have explained it, they haven't told you what to do about it. So Jonathan Dale, VP of Marketing, and myself, he's going to kill me that I said Jonathan Dale, but JD, VP of Marketing, and myself, Devin Foster, dive into this topic a little bit. So without any further hesitation, let's watch the episode. We are coming to you live from the booming metropolis known as Ambler, Pennsylvania. And I am joined today by JD, VP of Marketing here at Phenom. So JD, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
JD, as the people let us know where they are tuning in from, yes, I would love to know, what is your definition of quiet quitting?
My definition of quiet quitting?
Yeah. What does it mean to you? Is your Zoom frozen? Is there, or are you, what is quiet quitting? We're live right now. The people are on the edge of their seats. Yeah, those people. Yeah, behind the camera.
Oh, I was quiet quitting. I was quiet quitting.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Is that not what it is?
No. People have, that's, I guess, one interpretation of it is just not saying anything, being quiet, if you will. I don't think that is the consensus right now. I see people are tuning in from Philly and from Miami. Let us know what your definition is of quiet quitting in the comment section. JD, do you care to expand on that at all? Or
But it's not how it works.
No.
You don't just become quiet. I was going to bring a sign with me, and I was going to hold up the sign and said, I'm quiet quitting, but I thought that'd be too obvious.
It might have been. It might have been, but it also may have been. It may have been the right answer, right? Yes. So I will ask you again. What does quiet? I'll rephrase the question. How about that? What does quiet quitting mean to you? Don't give us an example of what it is, but what does it mean to you?
What does it mean to me? I think that's a great question. So let's just say, hey, Megan. Shout out to Megan. Shout out to John, Maggie, Sean, Jennifer, Sarah, everyone tuning in live. We appreciate that. Thanks for the interactions in the chat. Always feels good. We feed off the energy of our guests and who's, interacting with us. And so it's interesting. You can't escape quiet quitting, can we? When we say I think Dev and I were talking ahead of the show. When we say we can't escape it, what we mean is the media has certainly sensationalized a term. As marketers, hey, we love that. It means something's going viral. You're getting attention to something. Right. But I think it is confusing because you hear different discussions right now. You hear individuals talking about, oh, this always existed. This is nothing new. This is new. People are angry. People are sad. Like you have this all flood of emotions when you hear the term quiet quitting. And it does mean something, I think, slightly different to other people.
No, I agree. I love it. You brought up the marketing aspect and people getting exciting. I was on Twitter the other day and I saw Tim Sackett weigh in, who's been a previous guest on the show. And he said, quiet quitting isn't new. They just got a new PR agency. That is it. It is out. And Forbes defines quiet quitting as the bare minimum of your job. Instead of going above and beyond, think of it as a slow fade, a fade to black, if you will. Pull back on performing some of the extra works, log off your computer, and really focus on work-life balance. So it's not really quitting at all, is it, JD? It's kind of just doing the bare minimum, not necessarily going above and beyond. Nobody is, as you so eloquently put at the beginning of the show, just stopping talking and not being involved. They're just slowly turning back the effort that they're putting in. So I want to ask you a question. Have you ever seen this happen? And was it defined as quiet quitting when it was happening when you were managing a team?
Well, I think, you did put me on the spot. And you did ask me kind of, well, how do I define it, or what do I think about it? And so let's explore that. And then let's get into some of the deeper questions that I'm excited to talk about today. You're excited to ask, and I want to hear your opinion too. But I think the one thing I want to focus on is we're talking today about some ways to think about when you see the term quiet quitting, or when you hear all of these stories, when you read Reddit and you read individual stories about quiet quitting, and a lot of those are personal examples. You see what you're talking about, the gauntlet of extremes, right? Whether that's someone, struggling with anti-work and not wanting to work, and or going out of their way to say, I'm not willing to do X, Y, or Z, or what you said, someone is actually putting in the time, putting in the effort. They're not quitting, but all of a sudden, all types of people are being labeled by this. What I don't love about quiet quitting right now is I don't love the negativity around a lot of this. It's looked at as very negative. It's very negative, in my opinion. A lot of stuff I read, it's very negative. And I don't think it needs to be. So that's the first thing I wanted to start with. It doesn't need to be this negative thing. It can be this positive thing. And I think we saw something very similar around COVID times, right? We saw the Great Resignation, the big quit. Was that positive or negative? I still think that was positive as well.
Yeah, I agree to your point. And to what we said at the beginning of the show, it's not new, right? This isn't something that has come it's not a nuance, right? It isn't something that's happened in the past 3 or 4 months. It's been happening for a long time.
Yes.
You mentioned the pandemic. There was a huge focus on burnout, right? I think the lines were blurred between what working hours were and what, kind of work-life balance was, what time with your family was, what that looked like, because we're all accessible on our phones. We all have 1,000 ways to connect with our coworkers and our colleagues and everything like that. And I know firsthand in my household, my girlfriend gets calls 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. Nobody would have dreamed of doing that. And, before the pandemic, you get a voicemail, you leave a voicemail, somebody gets it the next day. With those lines being blurred, I think people have started to turn back. And if someone does want to take an evening off or something along those lines, I don't think that's necessarily an issue. And I certainly don't think it's quitting as well. But to your point, it isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No,
right?
but hold on. It wasn't an issue before the pandemic. It wasn't an issue during the pandemic. And it's not an issue now.
Yeah.
Someone needing flexibility within their work schedule was never an issue.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I will say, I don't think it was ever an issue. Yeah, there's edge cases that for some individuals, they don't have a role or a job that has some of that flexibility based upon the profession they're in. Well, if a doctor has all these appointments, I just felt like cutting out early to go to dinner. It's probably a little more difficult, right? Than an individual who is setting their own hours, that it may be a creative role, that they're more productive a little later at night. So So they left, quote unquote, left work a little early, but then they returned later on that evening when their creativity time was there and they really pumped out some output. Like, I think that's existed for a very long time, and at least in a knowledge worker space, and it hasn't changed. I haven't seen it changed.
No, coming from somebody who I consider myself mildly creative. Sometimes I need a glass of wine, right? To get the juices flowing, right?
Yep.
Sometimes you need to step away, take in nature, things like that. JD, I'm going to use a sports analogy here, right? Michael Jordan, known as the greatest basketball player of all time,
yes,
in a lot of people's minds. A player, right? Went above and beyond, put in the extra hours in the summer, in the off season, everything in between. Do you think everyone on those 90s Chicago Bulls team were A players? You think they all put in the effort that Michael Jordan did? I think when you look at the makeup of a team and of an organization as a whole, there are going to be some folks that put in that extra effort, that give you the championships that you need. Not everyone is going to, right? And that's not throwing shade on Scottie Pippen or Steve Kerr or any of the other Chicago Bulls that were on those teams. It's just people have different expectations, different standards that they hold themselves to. And I don't think anyone would consider those folks quiet quitters, right? Am I wrong by saying that?
So let's get really deep into it now. And for Devin Baker, who's actually pulling all the switches, let's do the 2-camera view so that you see Devin and I. Thank you. I want you to share with me a scenario that's being labeled as quiet quitting. I will give you my opinion. And you can give several, because we know quiet quitting, we just talked about, it's labeled so many different ways. So give me a scenario.
Yeah, the first scenario that comes to mind, I was reading an MSNBC article. It was around a teacher, right? She considered herself quiet quitting back in 2018. And the reason for that was because she didn't do any extra than she was provided, right? She didn't volunteer for any groups. She didn't coach any teams. She didn't win Teacher of the Year. She simply went in, was still a great educator, as she claimed. And I want to get her name, Maggie Perkins, from this CNBC article. But she considered herself, hey, I'm not going to go above and beyond because it's not going to change my pay. So would you describe that as quiet quitting? Somebody who shows up, still does their job, but doesn't go above and beyond?
Thank you. I'm on the spot now. I'm officially on the spot. I guess you have to be careful what you ask for. In the scenario, in the specific example, I don't know the use case, but I'll react to what I've learned just from you. It sounds like that individual's expectation was they were good where they're at with their career. They weren't trying to win Teacher of the Year. They're not complaining that they weren't winning Teacher of the Year. And so were they giving a great education to the students and not just doing any of some of the extra things? Right? Were they looking to become the next evolution in their teaching career, whatever that next role is? I don't know the teaching profession, but did they expect promotions in a way of different roles and complaining they weren't getting it? It doesn't sound like that's the case. It sounds like they were very secure and confident in what they were getting out of their profession, where their career path for their profession was, and it didn't require some of those other things. So I would say if they were killing it with the students and they were leaving their classroom a smarter, better place, they probably were doing their job. Because it sounds like the alignment they had with their expectations was in line with what maybe the school had. But we don't know. Did the school expect the teachers to do more? I don't know. Did it go into that?
It did
Was she penalized for not doing more? I don't know, right? But in what I've heard from you, my reaction is no. Yeah. It sounds like her expectations and the school's expectations, what was expected from her and the students, it was in line.
Yeah, and she got summers off, I would imagine, as well, which is another great benefit of teachers.
There
but
you go.
To that point, and us, diving into this a little bit deeper, I think it's very industry specific, right? And beyond industries, I think it varies on company size, shape, and makeup. When you look at banks, for instance, we're all familiar with the term banking hours, right? Yes. I'm working banking hours, right? So I'll ask you this question. If you have a bank teller, the bank is open from 8 to 4, shows up at 7:45 when they're supposed to be, clocks in, works their day, takes their lunch break, clocks out at 4:15 once everything's settled up and closed. Is that quiet quitting because they're doing the bare minimum? They're not sticking around to help out, to sweep the floors, to do whatever may be needed in that particular branch?
Yeah, thanks for putting me on the hot seat. Let me react to this one. And my reaction to this one goes a little deeper. On the surface, what you've explained, they're coming in on time, they're leaving on time. Sounds like they're a good employee. No, it's not. I haven't heard anything that's quiet quitting. That job requires them to work those specific hours. They don't have flexibility. They're working those hours. But now I have to ask, because I think it's deeper than just that scenario. How is that individual productivity in efficiency compared to others? Like, are they taking one person to help in banking service compared to their peers who are doing 3 to 4? And if that's the case, is it just because they're getting more difficult customer scenarios that they need help with? And therefore, no, they're working just as efficiently, just as hard? Or is it they're actually working slow on purpose to deal with less customers, and therefore there's a burden being put on everyone else too? I don't know. But if that's the case, I'd say, to me as a leader and a manager, I'm thinking maybe there's some quiet quitting going on. But as a leader, I'd have to start engaging with that person, looking at their workload, looking at the cases or the challenges, the customers coming in, what they're handling, to even know that.
JD, that reminds me of my favorite scenario, right? It's the group project in school, right? To bring it back to teachers. We've all been there, whether it be college, high school, even elementary school, where we are grouped with 4 or 5 individuals. We have to put together a project. There is always that one person who doesn't hold up their end of the bargain, right? And when you look at it from a team perspective, if you've gone to a professor or a teacher and said, hey, so-and-so really isn't carrying their weight here. This is a teaching moment, right? That's what the professor will say is you have to work together, problem solve, see if you can get that out of them. There will be plenty of individual situations where they can sink their grade. This is not one of them. You have to work through these challenges. And I think when we look at workplaces, right, the same thing happens. I can point to 5, 6, 7 people in previous roles that may not have held up their end of the bargain. It's not my responsibility to call them out or say, hey, you're doing a bad job. I think it's the managers, which is a segue to this. If you noticed something like that, where you described the situation where somebody may not be meeting with enough customers in a row, another term that's kind of been thrown around, Forbes had an article that you shared with me, quiet firing, right? Obviously, managers are put in a bit of a tough situation where they want to bring the best out of their employees, but it's now being described as quiet firing. What is quiet firing, and what does that look like when you're just trying to have a conversation with an employee to avoid quiet quitting? There's a lot of quiet things happening right now, and it seems like everyone's being very loud about it on the internet. I can't seem to wrap my head around it. But could you explain that a little bit?
Oh man, I ran across an article. I believe it was Jack Kelly of Forbes, and my initial reaction to the article as I was reading it, the first half of the article, I was like, man, this is really written in a negative way. And as I got further, and I recommend everyone read the article, as I got down in the article more, I said, man, he's hitting on a lot of pieces that actually are pretty accurate. So I do think, as writers, overall, I like the article. I liked understanding that someone was sharing a view of some of the things that do in fact have to happen. The slant on it, the negativity, I didn't personally connect with. So for to give you an example, one of the quiet firings it went into, a manager will start asking you questions and getting essentially into your business, right? And I feel as a leader, if I am not sure why someone is not as productive as I think they should be, or having an impact on the business as it should be, my role as a leader is to investigate why. Because that individual likely is not doing it on purpose. So this whole idea of like quiet quitting and people doing things on purpose to be, I don't know, not put in the extra effort. As a leader, I don't really think that's how us as humans and workers want to be. I don't think so. I truly believe that. So, but as a leader, I have to get involved and I have to start asking questions and understanding what is someone working on, and then why are they struggling with that work, right? It could be personal challenges. It could be they don't feel that they have the support in order to produce as much as they should be producing for a role. It could be they need more training, they need more coaching, they need more mentoring. It could be all of these things that are positive. And that's why one of the reasons I didn't like all of that article is because it didn't really go into those things that managers actually really do care about and care about their employees. So I think this whole idea of quiet quitting being done on purpose all the time is it's misconstrued, as well as quiet firing. It's also misconstrued. But yeah, it does happen. Like both sides, it happens.
To that point, I think it all comes down to expectations, right? And you have to set those expectations. We work for an HR company, right? We focus on talent acquisition, talent management, and everything in between. It starts in the interview process, right? Where you say, hey, if you're working for, a startup mentality sort of organization, we're going to need you to work off hours occasionally, not every week, not every day, but these happens. And if somebody isn't okay with that, right? From the get-go, you don't want to waste anyone's time. And from a talent management perspective, if you are concerned, I think it's asking what's going on in people's personal lives. Don't force them to give you an answer, but create that door of, hey, if you have something going on that is affecting your work, we can talk about it. We can work through that. And also setting those clear expectations of, it's not about logging in at 8 and logging off at 5, right? It is getting your work done. If you have an A performer that works fantastically, the way quiet quitting is being described, if they log in at 9, do their work by 4:30 and they're offline, that would be considered quiet quitting. But as a manager, if they're doing all their work, it's probably not. And I think a lot of this stems back from what you mentioned, which was the tsunami turnover, right? The big quit, all of these things where folks started to jump to new opportunities, right? And money was being thrown around. The economy was booming. All of a sudden, things have slowed down. Those jobs aren't necessarily there anymore, right? Folks may have switched roles and not been happy with where they're at. The expectations weren't set in the beginning. So I don't think this is a new thing. I think it really comes down to kind of level setting and understanding where your employees are. Am I way off with that?
I don't think you're way off at all, but I want to go off on a point or two.
Yeah.
I want to go off on a point or two. The employee who's putting in their required, quote unquote, required time, not willing to do anything else outside of that time, is that quiet quitting? Because that's some of the scenario. And my answer to that is, it might depend. If you find yourself in this situation, are you as an individual in an organization that requires on a daily basis individuals to go, like your work and your workload to go kind of above and beyond? What's above and beyond? Well, it's a very, very ambiguous term. Do you generally have to put in 10 hours a day? Okay. If you're not willing to put in 8, 9, 10 hours a day, does it mean you're quiet quitting? To me, no, it doesn't mean you're quiet quitting. But to me, it means there may be a misalignment between what the company's expectations are of that employee and what that employee's expectation is around the company they work for. One is not right or wrong. And I want to be very clear with that. One is not right or wrong. But to me as a leader, there's a clear misalignment about what that individual as an employee needs and is looking for and what that company is or isn't looking for. And those conversations need to be had. And Jen on the comment section said, can you explain why it's positive? And this is why it's positive. It once again allows us as leaders to work really closely with employees to have these conversations around alignment. And I can't stress that enough. You need to have alignment conversations. Why aren't you willing to go above and beyond? Well, what's above and beyond? Well, above and beyond, we have this big project due. Are you willing to put in the extra time to do this project? No. Okay, why? Well, I have a lot of personal things going on at home and it's distracting me. Okay, is that temporary thing? So you have the desire to do the extra work, but right now in your life, you can't take that on. Completely fine. Not quiet quitting. No, I'm not willing to do that. I want clear separation between work and personal. I only want to put in 8 hours a day, period. I'm not willing to do more. Okay, now we have a problem. You are an amazing employee, but not willing to do that extra thing. So you probably need to look for a company who only also requires that 8 hours of commitment. You'll thrive in that environment where in maybe a different environment, you just won't thrive as much, right? So again, great employee, wrong company alignment, needs to find that right fit. There's no bad people here or wrong people here. That alignment and that conversation needs to happen. And that's what I can't stress enough about the quiet quit or quiet firing. It's an opportunity to have these conversations. That's really important.
I think another thing that I've noticed around the quiet quit, I love all those points. And I saw we flashed up Tom's message here about North Star goals and metrics as well as purpose. I think that's vastly important. But the other thing that I think has created this is compensation, right? And it's a tough conversation to have no matter where you are. But it's a conversation that needs to be had. Otherwise, employees do quiet quit, if you will, right? If they're putting in that extra effort and they expect that next step in their career or that next raise and they don't get it, they're willing to not put in the extra effort. And I think that's shame on the employee at the end of the day. It's not an easy conversation to have, but you have to have it if you want to achieve that goal. If you are looking to get into a college or applying for a job, you have to ask. You have to throw your name into the hat. You can't just go above and beyond and say, oh, hands off. I hope they notice, right? And for managers, if that conversation is being had, I think you have to set clear expectations of this is what we're looking for. These are company goals that we have to achieve, right? Because there's budgeting. There are things like that happen. And I can understand the frustration that comes from going above and beyond and not getting compensated. But it's also, you don't get it now. That's not, if you want extra compensation, you have to find an hourly job, right? You have to work some of those frontline positions where you get time and a half for overtime or something like that. But when it comes to an organization, a lot of times the work that you put in, it doesn't show up the next day. The analogy that I'll use is it's like exercise, JD. You can't, do a crash diet and expect to have a 6-pack abs the next day. It's my biggest frustration with dieting. You can't run on the treadmill one day and then expect that you are going to, lose 30 pounds. It comes over time. And that's the same thing with some of these compensation aspects, some of these promotions that happen. And you have to set those clear expectations back to the managers. So I apologize about my little bit of a rant there, JD, but is there anything that you'd like to add or
I love rants. Skipped? First of all, I love rants, whether you're yours, mine, or someone else's. I love rants. But I think it's important when you look at it to say, okay, now what are your expectations of an individual? So if my expectation is I want increased pay, I want increased responsibilities, I want future promotions. Okay, well then leaders are looking for those individuals who are assertive in going after those goals. I am a leader. I look for employees who are clear to me about what they're looking for in their alignment is. And my role is to help encourage that by sharing, by giving stretch projects, and I expect them to go after it because my expectations are based on partly what their expectations of their own growth and career are. Again, when there's a misalignment, I'm not willing, I cannot, or I don't want to put in any of that. I don't want to take on a stretch assignment. Okay, well then how are you going to achieve what you need to? Because the stretch assignments is probably giving you exponential growth. It's probably giving you a skill set that you need to hone in or work on today. It doesn't mean that you'll never achieve your increased salary promotions, but it's probably going to be on a longer time frame or scale than someone who is willing and able to. Sometimes willing, not able, right? Because of other circumstances, but from a who is willing and able, probably going to grow a little faster, right? We have some comments up there. Andrew Jackson wrote, does the job temporarily pay above and beyond? I think in most salary, this is why it's no one size fits all. In most salaried positions, the answer is no, right? There's not that flex in pay because of that. However, some organizations are hourly roles. Yeah, you have overtime or you have time and a half or holidays, you have double time. Like, it's very organizational dependent. Or as a consultant where you are working per hour, yeah, I would expect if you're going, if you're putting in the extra time, you have that contract and you've negotiated that extra wage. No one's working for free, if you will, right? So I do think it's very dependent on the organization, but most, salaried positions, the expectation is that, you are going to at times have to put in more. More can be defined as effort, more can be defined as time, but also with that, you likely have the flexibility of doing less when you need to do less also. And I think that needs to be an important point, right? Many salaried positions, you have the flexibility. It's only talked about willing to do more and more and more. But when you need that flexibility for the doctor's appointment or for family obligations or family sports or any of that, you also should expect that flexibility in return. Right? It's not one-way street.
JD, and I think another aspect of salaried employees is year-round bonuses, right? Bonuses that come once a year. That's not baked into your gross pay. It is something that you earn with the extra effort that is put in. I don't think any employee should expect a full bonus or whatever. That's why it is up to X, Y, and Z %, right? That's why they say that. They protect themselves in the contract. You have to go above and beyond to achieve it. It's a bonus because you're doing bonus effort, because you're achieving those things, right? And it is situational based. And I think there are organizations that are looking at this a negative way and employees that are looking at this the negative way. I think the overall grand scheme of things is it's rebranding. People have been quiet quitting forever, right? The economy has taken a downturn. And one thing that, who was it? Analyst escaping me right now.
I don't want to say the name. I don't know.
Okay. Someone out there had said, people are talking about the economy taking a downturn, right? And they're going to look to who's performing the best before they make cuts. We went through this. 2 years ago, right? With the pandemic, there were employee cuts all over the place. Some companies were fortunate not to have to do that, but a lot of companies did. And they looked at top performers. And I think that's something to really look in on yourself. I wake up every single morning with the anxiety that I am going to get fired. That's a personal issue that I have that I probably should talk to somebody about. But when you think about it from an employee effort, you should be doing everything to keep your job every day. And if that's just the bare minimum, that's great. That is for you. Nobody is asking you to do more. But if you're not doing the bare minimum during a challenging time for an organization, you have to look at yourself in the mirror a little bit. And I know that's not a popular opinion, JD, but it's certainly something that I feel when I look myself in the mirror every day.
I think a point to this topic, I touched on it a little bit. You've touched on a little bit. And that is, I will go back to the alignment between what the employee feels like they need in their life and in their career right now. Now, notice I mentioned in their life and in their career. In most knowledge workers, that line is complete blur in balance. Now, you can say work-life balance, you can say work-life blend. The point is those two things are of equal weight, and it's the individual who controls how much they want to move in the family direction, personal direction, or work direction. I also strongly feel it's that individual's job. It's that individual's responsibility to understand that based upon their expectations and align themselves with an organization that fits. Okay. And again, you have an organization that is a startup environment. It's definitely different expectations than a company who's been around for 100 years, has hundreds of thousands of employees, has extremely detailed career paths that are defined for the next 10 years if you stay with that organization, compared to a startup that you're wearing many hats, your role is changing. The next 2 years, there could be 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 different new jobs created within that company, right? If that's not your environment that you want to work in because it doesn't align with what you need out of your career and out of your balance of family, then you need to take the responsibility to make that change, right? And if that means quitting, it means leaving. Quitting doesn't mean failure. Quitting doesn't mean bad. This could be one of your best employees that decides right now for the next 2 years, they just need to commit more time at home. In this role or this company is not going to be able to afford that based upon what the company needs from the employees. That's not bad. That's the right decision for the employee and the right decision for the company. That should be talked about, encouraged, conversation had. That employee should probably be celebrated and a party for them as they're going and making that change. That's really, so I'm saying individuals take ownership of what you need out of your career and out of your life. Make sure that aligns with the company. As a manager and leader, if I'm seeing an imbalance on what I feel could be a challenge, it's my responsibility, as it is every leader's responsibility, to get that employee and start having conversations. And it shouldn't be once a year. We learned this with COVID. It should be ongoing and active and proactive on both parties' parts.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I agree. You've left me speechless, JD, which doesn't happen often, in case you've noticed. JD, I want to scroll through the comments real quick just to see if we missed anything. But is there anything else that we can add? I know this is a very opinion-oriented session, right? I don't think I want to disclose nothing we're saying here is gospel, right?
Yes.
Nothing is the end all be all. This is open for interpretation. It is being interpreted everywhere right now, between TikToks, between articles online, between your local news station as they cover it. And I think it's just taking everyone's vantage point and looking at it and saying, oh, I understand where they're coming from. I understand why an employee may be frustrated. You have to have that conversation, right? It's all about communication and that transparency of what's going on, where an employee is frustrated because they're not getting that extra compensation that Andrew pointed out, right? Yeah. You have to have that conversation with your manager. Nothing's going to get done if you're just quiet about it. And the inverse of managers, if you notice someone who begins to not give that same effort that they used to, have a conversation. Ask what's going on. Is everything okay? If they share it with you, great. If you can point to, hey, I noticed, a couple weeks you were cranking through projects and it seems that your mood has changed. What's going on, right? Like, is there something at work that's bothering you? Is there too much on your plate? Those conversations are okay to have, but we rush through so many one-on-one scenarios, right? And meetings where we just check the boxes. Hey, how's everything going? Is it good? Great. On to the next thing. Anything I can help out with? No, we're moving forward. Any blockers? No, it's fine. It's having those meaningful conversations. We spend more time with our employees our coworkers and our colleagues than oftentimes we do our family. And I think having the same transparency that you would expect from your partner, from your mom, your dad, whoever it may be, you kind of have to have in the workplace as well in order to have a fruitful relationship long-term and keep employees from turning over, from the turnover tsunami happening, right? Retention is a conversation that we talk about all the time. It starts with a conversation, right? Like,
everything is starting with a conversation. Everything starts with clear communication. And I want to bring a comment up from Tom Tate. Tom Tate was mentioning about like managers and leaders setting expectations, or like, how can an individual person, I want to see the comments. I want to read it. Is this it? I don't think it's fair to encourage or expect good and solid employees to feel like they have to fight for a job. Now, this isn't the one. I didn't read this one yet, but it was a one around maybe it's defined purpose of North Star. Like, right. Businesses and managers haven't defined their purpose or North Star good. You can't expect workers to drive that extra 10 yards. You know what? I'm not sure if I agree or disagree with this comment yet on the fly. What I'll mention is I'll go back to, if you're an employee who's naturally driven and you don't feel a manager has clearly set that North Star, I would encourage you to reach out to the manager and say, I think we can have more impact here. I think we could do these things. Can you help me better understand what our North Star is? Like, where is that extra so I can go attack it? And I do think then that's a shared responsibility between the leaders as well as employees if it's not being clear. Maybe the leader thinks it is clear and the employee thinks, I have no direction here. Like, I don't even know where that next 10 yards is to be able to go for it. All of that's fair. Again, there's not a bad person and a good person. It is, if we can get these clear lines of communication happening between employees and managers, always talking about alignment or understanding your goals. Like if I know Tom Tate's career goals, my role as a leader is to try to help him get there. That's my role as a leader, is to help him grow and evolve into the person and individual and work person he wants to be, right? That's my job as a leader. Whether he's here or whether he's in a different company, that's still my job as a leader while I can have some impact. But I also think the employee can take responsibility and be proactive too, because that helps leaders, right? That helps give an appreciation for what someone else is looking for if I'm not aware, if I haven't taken the time to do that.
I think that makes sense. And from an employee perspective, JD, I think employees should track what they're doing, track the improvement that they're making over time. Even if you're not going above and beyond, it's different for every department. But if you're in IT and you're closing more tickets, if you're an SDR and you're having more discovery, questions, or you're setting up more demos, track all of that information so that when you define that North Star, when you have that conversation, you can come with some data and some information, not just, I feel like I'm doing more. You're going to get a better response if you say, hey, I've, put out X, Y, and Z videos, or I've answered so many phone calls at this call center. I've improved this particular IT issue 15 minutes faster than I was doing it 6 months ago. Like, those are great things to track and also help you improve as an employee. So we don't have sabermetrics like Michael Jordan does, right? Or anything along those lines where somebody is going to track this information for us. I'm sure that there are tools out there that do it, but also track it yourself, right? I think take pride in what you're doing. And even if you are just working 9 to 5 and you're doing the bare minimum, you're probably trying to improve on that so you can work 9 to 4:45, right?
Yep.
At the end of the day.
The one of the last things I want to say is what once again I don't like about quiet quitting or quiet firing. You're once again, those articles, a lot of the tone, it's pitting someone against someone else. And the media does this. It's natural because that's why you have something to talk about. But in practice for the employees I interact with, I don't see that. I don't see this good versus evil, and then this evil versus good or back and forth. I don't see that. I see individuals who want to work for a company that they believe in and a purpose that they believe in and really make an impact and a difference. I feel individuals really enjoy work and working. It's giving them purpose. It's helping their family. There's so many tangible and intangible positive effects by this. So when I see these articles, it bothers me because I don't see pitting one side against another. I don't see that in most of our day-to-day. Where I start seeing that is when I see an alignment issue between what that employee values and wants and what that company expects and demands. And when that's out of whack, then it snowballs into this negative, this isn't working, I don't like this environment. And what I'm saying, as it's getting towards that, unfortunately, it does happen, it gets towards that. What I'm saying is with real conversations and leaders who care, and employees who care, because most all employees care, we can avoid getting to that negative space. We can recognize what's needed and help that individual get to the next piece of whatever that piece is. And that's what I hope we walk away from, whenever makes it out of the headlines. I hope it encouraged more situations where managers and leaders have had really quality conversations with employees and help them on their journey.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, they're all on the same team. You're all wearing the same jersey. You're all working for the same organization. You want to work towards improving and being better. JD, I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone for joining us. The comments have been fantastic. I think there's a new comment here. I just want to make sure that I don't miss anything. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Andrew, Megan, Maggie, everyone at the top of the program. This has been awesome. JD, before we sign off, I know you kind of just did your final thoughts. You want quiet quitting out of the news. You want it gone. I'll call my connects at, the C-level suites in the media and make it happen for you. But is there anything else that you'd like to give the people before we sign off? I think JD's quiet quitting again. Special thanks to JD for chatting with me a week ago and being so eloquent when describing quiet quitting, for joining us on the episode. I think there were a ton of great points that were made. At the end of the day, I think we can all just stop talking about the quiet quit now. I'm okay with it. If you folks at home are okay with it, we will never cover that again on Talent Experience Live. Instead, as I mentioned at the top of the program, we are switching gears next week and the following 3 weeks after that, all the way up until October the 8th. We are going to be chatting about recruitment marketing. Next week's is going to be live with Amit Parmar from HR Tech in Las Vegas. So if you are there, definitely stop by. We're going to chat a little bit about social media. The following week is going to be with Jordan from Cave. We're going to talk about being genuine to yourself. After that, we're going to talk with real world recruitment marketers from ChemMed. And then, of course, the following week in October, we are going to chat about what technology can help you get there. What can get you to the promised land? Little hint, little secret I'm going to let out of the bag right now. It's Phenom. You definitely want to check out those episodes coming up in the following weeks. Don't forget to like and subscribe our YouTube and LinkedIn page so that you never miss an episode. And if you do by chance miss an episode, you can always check your notifications to see what you missed and catch up for the following week. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. I know football starts tonight. Take the Rams money line. Tune in next week for more football bets. If you're into that sort of thing, we'll be in Vegas. It is encouraged. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll see you then. Thanks.